Here we go again. What's up, folks? Fred Richani, TSC, with a breaking news update. I'm in my car right here. Just got out of the office, and I get the news alert via MMAfighting.com that John Bones Jones, the current UFC light heavyweight champion of the world, has failed another drug test. Now, you're going to see headlines that say, metabolite found of Turinabol in John Jones's drug test. You're going to see headlines like, abnormality, flagged by VADA. VADA points out, a discretion or a discrepancy, okay? But let's call it what it is. It is a failed drug test by John Jones. Now, I'm just going to sum up the MMA Fighting article here. I'll link in the description when I get a chance. Long story short, here's the real key details here. John Jones, in order to have fought in California for UFC 232, you may recall, okay, let me retrace the steps. John Jones was supposed to fight Alexander Gustafsson in Vegas. He did not fight him in Vegas because he got flagged for a metabolite of Turinabol. And through some very flunky, flimsy, perhaps BS science from USADA and the UFC, which of course pays USADA, they said, hey, this metabolite, this piece of the steroid that John Jones was flagged for a couple years ago, after the Daniel Cormier fight, is the same one that was back then. So it magically stayed in his system. So they somehow, some way, within 6 days, moved UFC 232 to California, who agreed to license him. Keep in mind, Nevada still hasn't relicensed John Jones. And Nevada felt too weary, too wishy-washy about licensing him so soon due to that abnormality. But California said, hey, we accept the science and blah, blah, blah. And then Jeff Novitzky came on the Joe Rogan show and talked about how John Jones is clean and it's just an abnormality, whatever. So then he fights Alexander Gustafsson, dominates Alexander Gustafsson, and lo and behold, he passes his UFC 232 drug tests under USADA and the commission. But in order to have fought at UFC 232, he had to also enroll in VADA, which is the keyword voluntary anti-doping agency. It's not affiliated with the UFC, but George St. Pierre, in the past, most famously entered in it prior to the USADA era in order to prove he was clean and tried to bring forth a clean era in the sport. And John Jones failed the test, got flagged for a test of metabolite under VADA. That means that it was voluntary. He voluntarily took that test, and he got flagged, and yeah, it was a positive test. Now, there's, to the best of my knowledge, at least on the California side of things, based on the article, no punishment set for John Jones because they're saying that is the same metabolite that he was flagged for prior to UFC 232. And before that, way back when he fought Daniel Cormier. Now, here's the thing I want you guys to think about. If this metabolite, which John Jones claimed after UFC 232, could stay in his system for 7 years, which is like a myth, like, oh, I swallow gum, it's going to stay in my stomach for 7 years. If that metabolite is that big of an issue, right, where, oh my God, it keeps coming up and I can't get rid of it, why did his other tests come back clean? Can somebody tell me that? Why did his other tests come back clean? If I'm contaminated with a tainted supplement or a steroid that I took intentionally or whatever, and it's something that could come up for years in drug tests, or at least for 2 years or a few months, 17 months, however long it's been since he failed that original test, okay? Why did it not come up in the other tests? Perhaps because, as many people have pointed out, it's bullshit. And it just makes no sense. And I almost feel bad for John Jones, and I'll tell you why. Because he admitted when he was trying to get relicensed for UFC 232 that he had done cocaine. And look, I know people do cocaine for fun, but the guy clearly has had issues. And one would think that if UFC actually cared about the guy and not just the money that the guy makes for them, he made a $700,000 buy pay-per-view for them, by the way, with that Gustafsson fight. Wouldn't it make sense to help John Jones get clean? Wouldn't it make sense to put John Jones to rehab? Wouldn't it make sense to, not rehab, but just do something? Like, instead of spending the money to move an event and do all this crap and get a big buy rate with John Jones, all this stuff, wouldn't it have made sense to just, invest that money towards helping him get his actual life on track and improving the drug testing? And you know what? Then you don't have to worry about John Jones failing a test and moving an event or something. You could have Jon Jones for another 10 years, 5 to 10 years, because he's still in his freaking prime. And he could be one of the cornerstones of your company. But UFC's in a position right now. They got the ESPN deal. And to be fair to ESPN, they haven't done super favorable coverage of the UFC. They've had Ariel Helwani and other people criticize them for the Greg Hardy stuff and everything else. But UFC is very secure right now. They have the ESPN deal. They just got 568,000 subscribers for ESPN Plus for that Cejudo Dillashaw fight. And let's keep it real. 568,000 people weren't going to buy that thing on pay-per-view. So that's a huge coup. They did like 2 million viewers for the prelims on ESPN. UFC is riding high right now. So they're in a position where, unfortunately, they can do whatever the hell they want. And in turn, that enables Jon Jones. In turn, that enables guys like Conor McGregor, who I'm a fan of, who's a great fighter, but a guy that, him and Khabib got a little too wild after that fight. What would have happened if actual civilians got hurt? It's getting to the point where the more you enable, I don't want to say the inmates, but the more you enable some of these guys who act out of line, the more it's going to eventually come back to bite you in the ass. And I can't believe this. We live in a freaking world where a guy can fail a drug test and a commission just shrugs. Not just the UFC, not just USADA, but a commission can just shrug. Andy Foster of California say, whatever. It's bullshit. It really is. And look, I wish the best for Jon Jones. Got nothing personally against them. But this is bullshit. And I feel bad for Daniel Cormier and other fighters that have to fight Jon Jones. He's fighting Anthony Smith next. That'll put the butts in the seats. And all I got to say is this. If Jon Jones is eventually going to fight Daniel Cormier, at this stage, it better be at heavyweight where Daniel Cormier at least has some advantage, because as far as I'm concerned, this is unfair. And this isn't just unfair for Daniel Cormier. It's unfair for fighters like Tom Lawler that had picograms of Ostarine, tiny-ass picograms, and lost 2 years of his damn career. Only to get his ass fired anyway by the UFC. But I guess, like in real life, when it comes to the elite, the rules are different, right? But folks, I want to hear from you. I appreciate you if you tuned in here to my breaking news live stream in this dank parking lot. If you enjoyed this update, please feel free to like this video, share this with all your friends, subscribe, don't forget to enable notifications, and tune in this weekend because I'm going to have a ton of interviews with a bunch of martial artists at the Atlantic City Martial Arts Hall of Fame. Maybe I may even get to chat with some former UFC Hall of Famers. We'll see what happens. But until then, hope you guys have a great week. Lay off the weed, lay off the drugs. Actually, weed's all right. But lay off the drugs like Jon Jones, allegedly. And until next time, everybody, as always, thank you, Chauncey Bullock, for commenting. Noe Lara.